Well, today is Saturday, January 11th, 2025, and Christy Clarke is a liar. Christy Clarke says she never was a conservative, actually. I never voted in the conservative leadership race for Jean Charest. I don't know what you're talking about. And I've got receipts to show that, well, she said that she was going to do all of these things. Anyway, regardless, it's very interesting, the Liberal leadership show that we are being forced to endure instead of an election. We should be having an election right now. Instead, we are watching a sideshow while Donald Trump is going to implement 25% tariffs. Mocha files a counterclaim against Edmonton Mayor Sohi, and that's interesting because Mocha was being sued by Sohi, so he's filing a counterclaim, so everybody's even Steven, and we'll see how that all goes. Some Coutts sentencing news, 90 days, 120 days, and so, I mean, they shouldn't really be in jail at all, but I mean, the beginning of the end of that nightmare for those guys. And Liberal leadership show, yeah, I think that we're being distracted using the Liberal leadership race. And there's a whole bunch of other crazy things going on right now as well. We've got to talk about the prorogation. Poilievre's gearing up for the election because that's going to happen eventually, right? And so much more. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Maxime Bernier says the house is on fire and Poilievre still wants the ballot question to be what sort of wallpaper we should have in the living room. He's uncomfortable talking about mass immigration, gender ideology, climate hysteria, foreign wars, equalization, COVID tyranny, and other controversial issues. So he wants to spend the whole election campaign only repeating his stupid axe the tax slogan like a robot. Poilievre says top election issue is still the carbon tax despite U.S. turbulence. Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of, I've said for a long time it shouldn't just be carbon tax, it should be a corruption election, but I digress. The corruption will continue, I think. That's the unfortunate truth of Canada. John Rustad has started the process of fixing or figuring out what happened in the BC election. There were irregularities, and he's asked for people to come forward, gathering evidence and a full investigation, and so we'll see where that goes. Reddit is trying to compile some information that was put on there, and they're asking Elections BC, we're wondering how to compile all the comments on Reddit. And here's one example, and there are many like this. Simple ad 1968. My voter card never arrived by mail. When I went this morning to my polling station, I was told that I had already voted in person in advanced voting, which I had not. Nobody could tell me where or on what day. They called a supervisor over who phoned their supervisor. They had me sign a declaration saying I only voted once and I cast my ballot. On my husband's voter card, it said that you do not need ID if you have your voter card and someone can vouch for you. Seems like a flawed system. The vote is out by at least one. Had this happened to anyone else, or can anyone else shed some light on how this happened? Thanks. Isn't that identity theft? Isn't that something like, I read a whole treatment talking about how in the United States, if this happens to you, you should call police because this is identity theft and there's a crime being committed and this is evidence and so on and so forth. But I don't know if that maps in Canada, right? So like, it's not like they're stealing your identity to vote, but they're not using your ID or anything like that other than to vote. But that's a crime, right? That'd be a crime. So all sorts of crazy things happening in Canada, not least of which, again, the 25% tariff barreling down on us in just 9 days. Trump becomes president, right, on day one. So that's interesting. Jennifer Ellis is highlighting Justin Trudeau. Remember when he canceled all of his year-end interviews except with the comedy show on CBC, right? That everything else gone. The comedy show that was done before Chrystia Freeland resigned, that one can go, but nothing else can go. And now he's run down to the United States and he's talking with Democrat-friendly media like Jen Psaki and all of those type of people, CNN, right? And so Jennifer Ellis says, why is Trudeau not doing interviews with Canadian news outlets like the CBC that we subsidize? MSNBC says, just announced Jen Psaki will sit down with Canadian Prime Minister. It was already recorded, by the way. It was recorded the same time as the CNN interview. Anyway, with a one-on-one interview following his decision to resign from office. So they're putting on a show. We are being distracted and we're being told what we want. And it's not true. I don't think it's true. I don't think Trudeau's really... He's resigning, I guess. It seems like he's resigning, but it seems like there's a lot of room for maneuverability. And that's not something that I'm comfortable with considering the seriousness of what's going on economically with the country, politically with the country, everything with the country. Here's Mark Holland. He looks like B.O. smells. And he's talking about, you'll get an election, you'll get your damn election. I just want to pass some things like censorship. He actually doesn't say anything about the censorship laws, but I'm reading between the lines and it seems like that's the stuff that they want to get done. Here is Mark Holland talking elections.
Parliament for 4 years. Everybody's, let's have an election. Let's have an election. Why? Like every 4 years you get an election. Like, democracy is not going anywhere, folks. Like, there's going to be an election, but we got stuff we got to get done. And I certainly, if I was a constituent and somebody who cared about healthcare, I'd be talking to my MPs and say, like, really, you're going to cause an election in May or June instead of October because what? You think it's better? You might win more seats, right? That's your calculus, that it's better for your party to have an election now? Like, we have a set election date.
Rich for this guy. It's better for the party to prorogue than it is to go to an election now. So you're doing what's better for your party instead of what's good for the country, party before country. And he's upset because realistically, the government should fall. Anyway, well, I guess there's another 30 seconds. The faces he's making is because he can't stand the smell. That's why.
Shouldn't we use the set election day? Shouldn't we use the time we're given as parliamentarians to get things done? And I can tell you, if I'm given to October, I'll get all the pharmacare deals done. I believe that. Now, Jeremy's sitting next to me. He can disagree, and that'd be totally fair, right? Because I got work to do, and I don't want to put him in an awkward position. But I really believe in this. I don't believe in it because I'm a liberal. I believe in it because I'm a Canadian, because I think it's the right damn thing to do.
Well, he's an out-of-touch lunatic then, right? So unfortunate we can't get our elected officials in touch with reality. Pierre Poilievre says the Liberal capital gains tax hike will cost 414,000 jobs, shrink GDP by $90 billion, and hit builders, farmers, and small businesses. CRA is charging this tax despite Trudeau shutting down Parliament to save the Liberal Party furniture before this becomes law. And the economic vandalism, call a carbon tax now. So he's not committing to removing this or winding this back at all. I'm wondering how this became law in the first place. Can they do orders in council for new taxes? Crazy town, right? Prorogation. This is Clyde, and he's got this guy talking, and what this guy's saying I agree with. I don't know who this guy is. I don't think that's Clyde. I don't think so. Clyde's younger, I think, right? But this guy's talking about prorogation and how minority governments shouldn't be able to prorogue. Clyde's asking, should a minority government even be able to prorogue Parliament? Should Justin Trudeau shut it down for personal political reasons? This isn't how prorogation was intended. Nope, but it's a political tool that can now be used, and power's power. So prorogue it is, right? But I fundamentally agree with this guy and how he's approaching prorogation. The Liberals should have been denied this prorogation, and I think that there's multiple strong legal arguments on this case. And again, I don't think that he's necessarily making a legal argument, but I think that there are multiple strong legal arguments citing prorogation in the UK, which our system is based on, of Boris Johnson being nullified by the courts, and further, the Liberal Party's leadership woes are not the government's problem; they're the Liberal Party's problem, and the Liberal Party needs to solve it outside of the government, because they have a job of running the government to do, right? Like, we elected the Liberal government to run the government. If the Liberal Party itself is disintegrating, then the government is disintegrating, and that needs to be addressed not through prorogation, but through an election. If there's no confidence in the House, then the government collapses, and we go to an election to elect a competent government. Right? That's fundamentally how our system is supposed to work. Prorogation this way in a minority situation is incorrect, improper, in my opinion. And this guy too. Here we go.
I don't think a minority government should be allowed to prorogue, because like the way a minority government works is what the governor general, what he's basically admitting is, I had a minority government, we're frozen, I've lost control of the government, I have lost confidence in the government. And then he's basically asking the governor general, give me another 2 months so I can desperately try to reorganize. It's like, no, the governors general should have said, is there somebody else ready to rule? Is there a coalition? Is there somebody else? No? All right, then we're off to the races. It's, yes. It's, and I think it is going to get challenged in the courts.
It's already being challenged in the courts. And hey, I've got news for you about that. I showed you this guy. He looks like Andrew Scheer, but isn't Andrew Scheer. He's from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and he's got an update. And the update is basically we were told by the courts we had to go to the Governor General and ask permission for an expedited hearing, and then we had an all parties meeting on Thursday. Regarding this case, and they should have movement and some kind of direction on Monday. So that's pretty quick, really. Like, when all things considered, he's got 9 minutes here talking about this. Worthwhile, but the link's in the description. I'm not going to play it for you now. I've summed it up basically. Like, they got their audience. They had to go do some things. They did the things, and they had an audience all together with all interested parties and movement Monday. That's it. That's basically it. 10 minutes summed up. Man, moving on. So that's good. I'm glad that there is some kind of movement. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I certainly am not like, okay, good, the courts are going to undo the prorogation. I don't like, we're not even there yet. If the courts undo the prorogation, maybe on the 27th, which is, a while away still, we'll have a confidence motion introduced. But again, this is the plan for Trudeau. This is what Trudeau's trying to accomplish in order to maintain power to October. Okay, anti-taxer, and this is just speculation, but I think it's interesting. Anti-taxer says Justin Trudeau's sort of resignation scheme is now clear. The $350,000 fee to run for leadership of the Liberal Party, up from $75,000, is designed to help Mark Carney secure the vote for leader. There's a lot of people tossing their hat into the ring. That's a lot of money for the Liberal Party to run for leader. Anyway, the second step is to get the NDP and Bloc to vote confidence in the government. This would keep Trudeau in the prime minister's seat potentially until the set October 20th election, because although Carney would be the leader, he cannot be the prime minister until he won a seat. Singh and YFB have both reportedly refused to play along, but a lot can change before March 24th. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think that there's a lot of, I think that plausible. If they could potentially manage it, they would absolutely manage it. And if we close our eyes and sleepwalk through it and let them, they'll get C63 passed. That's the goal. That's what they want. Table Salt says the Liberal Party of Canada suspended democracy to prevent an election so they can vote in an unelected prime minister, Mark Carney, outside of the Elections Canada voting rules and using only flimsy party bylaws. The courts need to intervene now. I don't think the courts are going to intervene. The courts are bought and paid for by the Liberals. Totally. Sheila Gunn-Reid is responding to Christy Clarke. She says Christy Clark signed on to China's imperialist Belt and Road Initiative when she was the BC Premier. In case you're wondering if the Liberals were finally serious about getting tough on Chinese influence. They aren't. Of course not. Nope. Pierre Poilievre is talking Christy Clark too. Carbon tax Clark bragged about having imposed on BC the highest carbon taxes in North America, even higher than Trudeau's carbon tax on gas, heat, and groceries. She's just like Justin. So just like Justin seems to be, they're testing that right now. So I don't know. Vote Canada says she wants to be the new leader of the Liberal Party, huh? During Christy Clark's time as Premier of British Columbia, her administration was embroiled in numerous scandals and allegations of corruption that significantly shaped public and political discourse. One of the most notable was the ethnic outreach scandal, or quick wins, where leaked documents revealed a strategy to target ethnic communities for electoral gains by using public funds for partisan activities. This led to criminal charges against some political staff and a subsequent repayment of public money. Another contentious issue was the alleged slow response to money laundering in BC casinos. They didn't respond at all. All of the cases collapsed. Reports suggest that Clark and her ministers, same thing, were aware of the influx of suspicious cash but did not act promptly, leading to later criticism by the Holland Commission, which found no personal corruption but highlighted governmental oversight failures. Transparency was questioned when allegations surfaced that government emails were triple deleted to evade freedom of information requests, particularly concerning the Highway of Tears investigation. This was criticized by BC's Information and Privacy Commissioner, highlighting potential lack of transparency, and more. There's a long list, right? So she's corrupt, and there's all sorts of scandals to back it up. Rex Glazier says, OMG, someone remind this creature of her drunken rant about repeating a lie often enough. The worst kind of politics is being a Trudeau Liberal. So Catherine McKenna weighs in, and she loves Christy Clark. Dear Liberals, I can 100% confirm that Christy Clark is a conservative. Oh wait, she hates Christy Clark. Worst, she thinks politics is saying whatever is required to win. The worst kind of politics. Catherine McKenna was the one who said, just say it, repeat it over and over, and people will start totally believe you. So that's weird. Here's her actual tweet. So she doesn't like Christy Clark. I thought she was on Team Clark. Okay. Stephen Taylor says Christy Clark just got destroyed on national television as she got outed in a very big lie. Watch the whole thing. And Stephen Taylor, somebody else tightened it up. Ryan says, I've shortened the clip of Christy Clark outright lying about not being a member of the CPC in order to vote for Jean Charest. And so this is the second half of the clip, and then we'll go to the first half after this one, I think.
Moving the federal Liberal Party to the left, it has got to be a big step for you to join the Conservatives. Why did you do it?
Because I think that we need there is only one leader who's running for office right now, who is going to be able to unite the country, I think, and who's going to bring a moderation and a willingness to talk to the people with whom he disagrees, and that's Jean Charest. I'm joining the party so that I could support my friend Mr. Charest, and what I think he can bring to the national dialogue. I mean, I do think he'd be a devastating opponent for Mr. Trudeau.
And here she is talking about how she didn't join the Conservative Party, and they'll probably manufacture some kind of ballot that she did, but she didn't do that.
You have called yourself a lifelong Liberal, but you voted in the last federal Conservative leadership race. That would have required you to cancel your Liberal Party membership in order to join the Conservative Party. How long were you a member of the Conservative Party, Christy Clark?
Never.
But you voted in the race, did you not?
No, I didn't. And I never got a membership, and I never got a ballot. What I did, though,
I will say, Christy Clark, we reached out to the Conservative Party, who told us, in fact, that your membership was cancelled.
Oh, well, why don't they come out and show my membership or my ballot? They never sent me any of those, although I wouldn't put it past them to manufacture one of them.
Even with...
Okay, hold on. It gets even better. Here is a CTV News article. It says federal Conservatives running to the extreme, says former BC Premier Christy Clark. This is from the time period, August 11th, 2022. And right at the bottom, it says, speaking Thursday, Clark said she recently received her ballot in the mail and will be voting will vote in the contest. I think Jean Charest will be a fantastic prime minister, she said. So she went on TV and lied about it? Huh. Here's the tweet. Speaking Thursday, Clark said she recently received her ballot in the mail and will be voting in the contest. But if you ask her, no, they'll probably try and manufacture a ballot that I never touched or even saw or looked at or anything like that. Pretty crazy stuff, right? Other leaders are stepping up or not. Mélanie Joly says maybe. Here's her statement. What does this statement say? I think it says a lot of nothing. Mélanie Joly, I know that she's not running, but it's kind of still up in the air. Mélanie Joly says, I must dedicate every minute of my time and all my energy to defending the interests of Canadians, which is exactly what I'm doing and will continue to do. Right. And her letter here, it's supposed to jump out, but it doesn't. Okay, there it is. She says, I chose public service to help my fellow Canadians achieve a better life. Throughout my career, each time I've been faced with a choice, I ask myself, how can I make the biggest impact for Canadians? Over the past week, I've spoken with dozens of friends, colleagues, and close advisors, not her family, many of whom have encouraged me to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. While I know I'm ready to become the first woman to lead the Liberal Party of Canada, I must also recognize that the current international situation, especially the unjustified threat of tariffs and other economic pressures from the President-elect of the United States, requires a firm and urgent response. This is happening now. Okay. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, I must dedicate every minute of my time and all my energy to defending the interests of Canadians, which is exactly what I'm doing and what I will continue to do. I want to thank everyone who has trusted me. Your support inspires me to continue defending our country, our economy, and our jobs and our values. So that's a no, right? It's no? That's I have to continue what I'm doing and not focus on the leadership race, continue what I'm doing because I don't have the capacity to do both. Okay, better that she's not running in the leadership race, I think, right? Here's an interview with her talking about this, and like she's prepped, like she's done her hair and she's done her makeup and she's ready to do a little presser here, and it's, again, she's kind of mealy-mouthed about it, but here we go.
Hi, how are you? Okay, so good to see you. I hope you're well this morning. J'espère que vous allez bien. Well, over the last couple of days, I've had lots of good conversation with my team, with my key organizers. I've received a lot of support from across the country, and I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all these supporters. But essentially, I had to ask myself two questions. The first one is, am I ready to be the first woman to lead the Liberal Party of Canada? And the answer is yes. And am I ready, at the same time, to step away from my responsibilities as Minister of Foreign Affairs at a time where it is a crucial time in the Canada-US relationship? And the answer is no. And the reality is I can't do both. So I'm heading into the Canada-US committee in the cabinet room And we will be talking about retaliatory measures against potential tariffs from President-elect Trump. And we will be ready. And I'll do my job. And so I'll be in Washington next week. Spoke to Senator Graham again this morning. And of course, I'll be running to win Hansikatseville because this is the passion of my life.
Passion of my life, but I don't want to run the country. It's fine. It's fine. I'll just keep doing this job. She sounds like almost hyperventilating, almost close to tears during this part, where she says that she's going to go in and talk about counter tariffs and things like that, which is the wrong move. When somebody comes and says, "Hey man, you want to, I'll show you how to go to the gym and lose a bit of weight because you got a little hefty." You don't go countermeasures on them. You thank them for their concern and maybe you go to the gym, right? It's like somebody offering you gum. You don't say no. You say, "Oh, thanks." Right? Like that's a polite way of saying you've got stinky breath, buddy. Freshen up. Here's some gum. Okay. And when Donald Trump said, "I want the drugs and the illegals to stop coming into the United States from Canada," it wasn't just like, it's friendly and like punching you on the arm and like, and if you don't, I'm going to put 25% tariffs on you. It wasn't an opportunity to go to war with the United States. It was an opportunity to frigging well lose some weight and fix our borders and our drugs situation. But instead, everybody's going after whole counter tariffs and all the rest. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Andy Lee says, so far we've got ventilator fraudster Frank, all for foreign agents Aria, and conservative Christy running to be the next leader of the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister of Canada. What a sorry bunch. Who could potentially be elected by a golden retriever or a poodle, might I add. So the Liberal leadership contest is not secure, to say the least. And Mark Carney, the front runner and the heir apparent, I guess, which is kind of crazy, but because I think Chrystia Freeland really wants it, has got Ghislaine Maxwell pictures. So him and the, I can't remember what this guy's name. He's like a CEO, venture capitalist guy. I can't remember exactly what he was, but these guys were hanging out, and Ghislaine Maxwell's hanging out with Mark Carney's wife, right? And so like all of that, very, very strange. We haven't got the Epstein lists or anything like that. And in absence of that, pictures like this stand in for, well, you look damn guilty and you probably shouldn't be the prime minister there, Mark Carney. And I guess Mark Carney's blaming the Pierre Poilievre campaign for releasing these pictures. But Pierre Poilievre didn't make you go hang out with Madame Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, Epstein's Madame Ghislaine Maxwell there, buddy. Like, how many 13-year-olds did she introduce you to? Like, what in the world? Somebody was saying Mark Carney was not on the Epstein list or the Epstein flight logs, but we don't have the big list. We don't have the list that was obtained after the whole island was exposed and Epstein was taken down and then murdered in his cell by paper cuts or whatever he was murdered by. So this is damaging for Mark Carney. It should be hugely damaging for Mark Carney. The only paper that's running it is Brian Lilley on the Toronto Sun. So Sun Media is going with this one. It's not going to be widely talked about, but it's hugely important and will be swept under the rug, right? So we're going from Trudeau, who's friends with Bronfmans, to Carney, who's friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Maxwell's. And if you know who the Maxwells are, then you know, right? And that's uncomfortable, but they all run in the same circles: Bronfmans, Maxwells, Trudeau's, and Carneys, right? So, very, very concerning. Ryan Garrettson says, let's move on a little bit. Grab bag of governance. I love our grab bag of governance. Ryan says, the guy who went to a funeral to network with people, he is an insufferable creep. And so this is Justin Trudeau at the funeral for Jimmy Carter, trying to shore up support, get international support for his bid to maintain control of the Canada, of the Liberal Party, et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty crazy stuff. This is sentencing for two of the Coutts guys. One of them fired their lawyer recently, and so their sentencing was delayed. But one of them's already had the sentence and is out, I believe. And these were deemed the Coutts 3. And I think I'm terrible with names, so I apologize. But Gerard Jansen got 90 days in prison with a CSO, which is a CSO stands for conditional sentence order. In legal terms, it's a type of sentence in criminal law where the offender serves their sentence in the community under strict conditions, so house arrest. And Marco, what's his name? Marco Van H. got sentenced to 120 days for his involvement in the Coutts blockade. So Mocha reported on that and kind of reported on everything up to the point of the sentencing, but then didn't talk about the guy, how they responded. So that's kind of unfortunate. And Marty up north says Marco Van H just got sentenced to 120 days in jail for his involvement in the Coutts blockade 3 years ago. Meanwhile, politicians who have defrauded us, Canada, out of billions of dollars walk free. This is not justice. This does not protect citizens. This is a message to citizens that they better think twice before challenging the establishment. I think that's accurate. I think that that's the intent here, right? And in fact, the judge talks about Mocha is in the courtroom, and he goes through what the judge talks about, and he says basically the judge needs to make an example of these guys so this kind of stuff isn't seen as a viable way to protest in the future. They are trying to make an example of this. Stand up to the establishment and you will be thrown in prison is the message being sent, okay? Which isn't great, but that's what they're trying to do. That's the intent of all of this. Here is Mocha again, and he says, yes, the media reports are true. We filed our statement of defense and a $3.1 million counterclaim against His Worship Amir Soshi. So I'm getting all of his name wrong there. I'm sorry. YG Wave says Edmonton Mayor Sohi is being sued for defamation by Bob Ray, R-A-I, and Mocha Bezergan, I'm getting his name terribly wrong too, I'm sorry, who filed a counterclaim seeking over $3 million in damages, arguing their statements were truthful, made in good faith, and not defamatory. So there you go. That's the defense is, I'm a reporter, and this is being reported, and you should probably respond rather than suing me on it, right? Pretty interesting. America AF says Mark Zuckerberg orders the removal of tampons from the men's bathrooms at Meta's offices. One of the main truth and safety officers at Facebook is a former Prime Minister of England. And I know that, and that seems super duper weird because the Canadian military, and I think maybe the American military, were putting tampons in men's bathrooms, kind of to the dismay of everybody because it's a waste of money and men don't need tampons, right? Obviously, men don't need sanitation products because men don't have vaginas, and we don't bleed from our uteruses because we don't have those either, right? So fundamentally unnecessary, right? And it's weird how governments did the same thing as this big corporation, and now it's kind of big news that this big corporation is backing off on this. Does the Canadian military still put tampons in the men's washroom? Why? Isn't that strange? Why is that being tolerated at any level? Why is that being tolerated on the base level? This is a line item that can be removed. Why is it in here? And the justification doesn't make any sense. Again, biologically, it doesn't make sense, right? Remove it. Get it gone. We're not spending money on that. So it's very weird that this is news, but it is news, and it's kind of corporations standing in as a de facto government. There was a show where there was time travel, and it was, hold on, I'll remember the name in a sec. Darn it, I went and looked it up. The show is called Continuum, and I really thought the show was good. It was top notch. It was a very good show. The third season, I don't think it was very all that interesting, but the first two seasons I thought were really strong, and the stories were pretty strong. Anyway, the premise of the show, Continuum, is a Canadian science fiction television series created by Blah. The premiered on Showcase in 2012, ran 4 seasons. The premise is City Protective Services law enforcement officer Kira Cameron lives with her husband and son in 2077 under the corporatocratic and oligarchic dystopia of the North American Union. Oh, man, right? So the structure of the government in 2077 has become, the corporations are so big that they just run everything. Their terms of service, you have to sign on for everything. To get healthcare, you have to agree to terms of service. It's just like an Apple contract. Nobody reads it. They just say, okay, sure, fine, no problems. And it's like this dystopia nightmare. It's all Vancouver, where she lives. Vancouver 2077 isn't actually Vancouver anymore, although it may be called Vancouver, but it's part of the North American Union, so it's not in Canada anymore. And there's towers everywhere. They go back to her. There's flash forwards where she goes back to her old life from before the time travel incident, and you see Vancouver and all of this other stuff. Anyway, this kind of structure has been around in sci-fi for a while. And what do? They use media to signal their intention. So this kind of stuff, when it comes up like this, kind of creepy. It's a little creepy. Anyway, the North American Union, who's been talking about that recently? Donald Trump. Jeepers creepers. I digress. Moving on a little bit. I hope the Facebook situation with the tampons goes wide for our corptocratic dystopia. Darn it. Roman Baber says, read the darn numbers. Almost half of the December jobs are in the public sector again. Private sector jobs account for just 27,000 out of 91,000. Not even a third, or maybe just barely a third. 91,000 jobs created, and most of them were government jobs. So the government is incompetent and expanding their books, and in order to hide the weakness in our economy, because there's not a lot of private sector jobs being created, right? And that's not good. That's bad. Here's Page Wizard Games. This is an insane city council meeting out in where he is. I thought it was Alberta, but I think it's actually Saskatchewan. Oh, it tells me Springfield. Is it Springfield, Manitoba? Manitoba. Okay, so this is out in Manitoba, and this is a minute of a city council meeting, and these guys are supposed to be trying to solve problems, and the mayor's kind of a D-bag, and one of the other city councilors calls him out, and the whole city, or the people in the audience, boo him. It's like watching Parks and Rec. This is honestly kind of like watching Parks and Rec. And the person who's doing the minutes recording, it's kind of funny to watch her face too during this whole thing. Here we go.
You know, this venue is sufficient for 99% of our council meetings. I don't know why you're shaking your heads, because 99% of our meetings, this venue is sufficient.
We're talking. Why don't you sit down?
So council,
You sit down. We are trying. Our CEO is trying to explain here.
I don't even know
Our CEO is trying to explain. Sit your ass down. You need to sit down. Body move. Look who's talking. No, I won't retract.
I'm asking a point of order. Those vicious words to the public. Those are the same people that pay your wage, that elected you, that may not elect you next time, and have a voice to say.
So, I mean, it's interesting. People are trying, and this is from September. You can also see the Zoom footage. What was being shown in this is the Zoom footage doesn't give you a fulsome idea. Oh, you can't see the Zoom footage because I'm in the way. The Zoom footage was in the top corner here. So people who were just present on Zoom could hear what was going on, but couldn't see what was going on. And what was actually going on was pretty raucous, really, right? Pretty incredible. And so how do you fix that kind of problem? Because again, power is power, and the people who are trying to silence the citizens from being heard are trying to maintain their power. And so I don't know how you move forward from that in a realistic way, because, well, they're using censorship, and we're going to talk about censorship in a minute. I just want to talk about the USA before we do. They're using censorship in order to get their way, and they're doing that up and down across the board. Okay, we'll swap it. We'll do USA after censorship. But they're using censorship in order to say, listen, if you come to a city council meeting and I call you, I tell you to sit your butt down in the chair and blah, blah, blah. Like, I basically chastise you like a father would chastise a child. You have to take it. And if you don't take it and you start yelling back at me or treating me the way I just treated you, we're going to shut this whole thing down because you're being mean and rude. And that's an alt-right thing to do, right? Like, they use those kind of tricks. They bait you. They do things in order to provoke you. And then when you behave the way they've behaved, or sometimes nicer, like if they behaved like a 10 for rudeness, you behaved at an 8 for rudeness, they're like, hold on a second, this is crazy, you're so rude. And then they shut you down and you're like, you just swore at me. Like, I didn't even swear, you swore at me. Right? And these things are happening everywhere. It's not just, and it's not always as open as in Manitoba, right? That seems very open and raucous. In places like Guelph, they'll just lose your email. They'll never respond to you, things like that. And it's sneaky and it's underhanded, and they know what they're doing, right? They'll give you a $47 million bill for freedom of information, that kind of stuff. Sneaky. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.